Welcome to 144,000 teachers, the first fruits unto God and to the Lamb. In the menu, city, country. And as you scroll down from city to country living, you will come to this particular study, preparation for survival, and then enter into day number 3, where you will obtain now the study that we are looking for on natural remedies save lives. As you scroll a little bit more down, you will come to cholera, rice water, cholera, and charcoal. Looking first at this article, a scientist article on rice could make cholera treatment more effective. Scientists at EPFL have shown that though undeniably effective, the current rehydration therapy for cholera could increase the toxicity of the cholera bacterium. Backed with new data, the scientists propose a change in the treatment, replacing glucose with starch from rice powder. Cholera is caused when the bacterium Vibrio cholerae infects the small intestine, resulting in severe diarrhea and vomiting, which can result in dehydration and death. The main treatment involves oral rehydration therapy, where the patient drinks water mixed with salts and glucose. But although proven to be enormously effective, there are concerns that the glucose content might actually worsen the disease. EPFL scientists have now shown that this is indeed the case, as glucose increases the toxicity of the cholera bacterium, whereas replacing glucose with starch can reduce its toxicity by almost 75%. Their work is published in PLOS, Neglected Tropical Diseases. Cholera treatment effective but could be improved. The usual treatment for cholera comes in the form of oral rehydration therapy packs. Essentially, it involves feeding the patient water mixed with electrolyte salts and glucose. The idea is to replace the patient's lost fluids and essential salts, while the glucose acts as a source of carbon that helps the intestine to absorb the salt more efficiently. The patient continues the therapy until the infection has run its course. Up to half of cholera patients will die without treatment, but oral rehydration therapy has been shown to lower the death to around 1%. However, there are concerns that using glucose in the rehydration mixture can actually exacerbate the disease. The problem is that the infecting bacterium also consumes glucose, and that increases the expression of its genes that make it toxic. On the other hand, some field studies have shown that using more complex carbon sources like starch from rice powder might be more effective. Despite this, there has never been a decisive study linking oral rehydration recipes with their effect on how the disease spreads. The cholera bacterium Vibrio cholerae infects humans by releasing a protein called the cholera toxin. Consequently, regulating the genes that produce the cholera toxin can either increase or decrease the bacterium's capacity to spread disease. An alternative to glucose. Melanie Blokesh and Andrea Rinaldo at EPFL have now correlated data from a recent cholera outbreak in Haiti with the effectiveness of oral rehydration therapy. Blokesh lab grew the cholera bacterium with different sugar, such as glucose and sucrose, and starch from potatoes and rice to see how each would affect the cholera toxin genes. The scientists found that both the activity of the genes as well as the production of the cholera toxin itself were increased when the bacterium was fed with glucose, but they were considerably decreased when it was fed with starch from rice. Although the explanation for this is complicated, one of the reasons is that the type of sugar available glucose, starch, etc., to the bacterium affects the mechanisms that regulate the activity of its toxin producing genes. Ultimately, this effect influences the bacterium ability to infect humans. The team of Andrea Rinaldo focused on matching this data to the actual cholera epidemics in Haiti. Using data from the outbreak of cholera that started in 2010 in the region, they developed a mathematical model of the disease epidemiology. They then modified the model to include oral rehydration therapy based on rice starch instead of glucose. The results showed that using this alternative approach could have a 30% reduction of cholera cases, 375,000 instead of 520,000 cases on the island within the first 14 months of a pandemic. The results feed into the current discussion of cholera treatment and strongly suggest a review of current approaches. Of course, we are not saying stop doing oral rehydration therapy with glucose right away because it works so well, says Melanie Blokesh. But still, the data suggests that the regimen can be significantly improved and that the community needs to start discussing this possibility again, especially in areas endemic to cholera. And again, this work represents a collaboration between EPFL Laboratory of Molecular Microbiology and Laboratory of Ecohydrology with the Milan Polytechnic and the University of Padova. As a reference, it is not very, very new because years ago, there was definitely some use of rice water. Even as a child, I remember from coming from a very large family, my mother had learned from her mother that this is the best way to treat a child with actually that has diarrhea. Very effective. For a baby that has diarrhea, we would always prepare rice water and of course basically just do a suspension of it, not necessarily the rice with it. You have to use only the water and then dilute it slightly and then put it into the bottle. And the child would actually, a baby actually, would come back to health very quickly. And it's very effective for adults as well. So it would demonstrate here, it would seem to demonstrate that the rice water has the capacity to basically control that bacteria that is formed by cholera and give excellent result. So this is one solution that you can find through this article that could be effective. And at Way of Life, when we have encountered some cholera with clients, and very effectively, we actually combine, once we have done the rice-based water treatment, then we combine it with charcoal. Charcoal, which here we have a booklet, which we have in a PDF format. It's a digital and it can be printed as well. This is actually written by Dr. Agatha Trash from UC Pine. She passed away now, and her husband. They were both medical doctor and naturopath. Her and Agatha Trash, Calvin Trash is her husband. And they show and demonstrate in this booklet, which is kind of old, but very effective. And we have it here. It's actually had been prepared since 1988. And this is all the beautiful table of content that Dr. Trash have prepared to show the quality, the capacity of charcoal for treatment and the way it works. And we will not go into this particular right now because this is being demonstrated in order to use for charcoal treatment, for cholera treatment. However, we want to bring you to the page where it shows very clearly in chapter 7 of that booklet what to do in case of cholera and particularly also diarrhea. Perhaps one of the most effective uses for charcoal is in case of diarrhea. It has been used by soldiers in time of war for both the prevention and treatment of diarrhea. About the same time, the French reported benefits from charcoal in military campaigns The German literature also carried similar reports. Soldiers carried the custom of using charcoal back home to their families, and the custom has since spread all over Europe, and we must admit over the USA as well and Canada. In diarrhea caused by cholera, 2 heaping teaspoons of powdered charcoal should be given 4 times daily, as well as with each loose stool. All the fluid one can take by mouth should also be supplemented with 1 to 2.5 liters of normal saline intravenously or per rectum or subcutaneous push-in. Since severe dehydration characterized cholera, it must be fought from the beginning of treatment. So Dr. Trash does not deny the treatment therapy for hydration, but she does encourage charcoal. And with here, we have actually worked with charcoal, and we have used first the rice treatment, the water treatment with rice, and then the charcoal, and we have obtained very good result to treat cholera. And it's also very effective in many others. You can actually, as it's mentioned in the booklet, you can use it for cancer. You can use it with poultice charcoal. And of course, we do not recommend charcoal, especially in powder, to be just taken orally in powder. You need to have it put into water in order to drink it. But this is a very, very important recommendation. And here it says when patients die, it usually not of toxicity, but dehydration. Treat dehydration with vegetable broth to which half to 1 teaspoon of salt has been added per pint. Measure the quantity of fluid lost in stools and urine and replace that much plus the usual 8 glasses daily with some extra if there is a fever with sweating. With great care and diligence, these patients can be saved. So you see, there are many, many methods, and Dr. Trash here definitely has left some beautiful, beautiful suggestion here. Again, going from there to 40 camping for children who had basically had diarrhea during the night, and by the morning, the leader and all the girls felt bad, and most of them had diarrhea. And by nightfall, they were all suffering from diarrhea, which can be very dangerous because you can be dehydrated really fast. So basically, they were wondering if they should take it to take the group back home, or should they call a doctor. And she had heard about charcoal that was good for diarrhea. And as she sat gazing into the fire, she decided she would try making her own charcoal, which is very easy to make. She took several pieces of partly burned wood from the fire, rinsed the ashes off, and chew as much as the charred wood to a fine powder as possible. And within an hour, she was feeling entirely better. You don't even need to chew on it. You can just suck on it, and it's very effective. Or you can put it even when it is hot, red hot, put it in a glass of water, and you will get an activated charcoal. And as it mentioned here, you have to remove the ashes on the top because it can be irritating for the when you drink it. But basically, it is not impossible to be helping people with simply cold from the fire and suck on it or chew on it. Within an hour, she was feeling entirely well. She convinced 4 of the 8 girls to chew some of the charred wood pieces. Each girl who tried was well, they were well within an hour. Those who could not bring themselves to chew on the charred wood continued to be sick throughout the entire camping trip, which can be very dangerous because they could get dehydrated. So the dosage of charcoal for diarrhea is the full dose given repeatedly, 1 dose with each loose stool. Use 1 heaping tablespoon stirred into water for an adult and correspondingly a smaller dose for a child. Even for babies, you can have actually babies who have diarrhea or they have jaundice. You do not give them the water and the charcoal directly in the mouth, but you can do a suspension where you actually stir the purified water. You boil the water, you purify it, and then you put the charcoal. You stir the charcoal will settle at the bottom, and you will see if you look in the light, there is a suspension. You actually decant it and then put it into a bottle and the baby will drink that suspension, and that will care for the diarrhea. Very effective. So we encourage you to read more about this booklet, because the purpose of this presentation had to do with diarrhea, but mainly with cholera. But here you have two powerful use of rice, the rice that we have talked about, how to care with the rice for basically care for cholera with very good, very effective result, and charcoal. And with natural remedy, the beauty about it, and the person cannot be on medication to be able to treat them effectively because they contradict each other. But the beauty about charcoal, again, and rice water, they will actually work really well and very effectively quickly, because they are natural and they can be absorbed easily by the body. And the body recognize the starch, and it will recognize in the charcoal carbony, which is basically the basis of all organic chemistry. For those of us who have studied inorganic and organic chemistry, the basis of organic chemistry is carbony. So basically, any formula of, basically, if you study even the nutrient into the food, you will see that most of those nutrients, except for mineral, have carbon in it. And we're talking about the oil, the fatty acid, the oil, the sugar, which again you have in to the starch. And then if you study as well the protein and the vitamins, they're all made up with carbon. So this is our biochemistry study based on rice water and in charcoal, and many more effective, just as effective with herbs and other treatment that we are presenting in this session. So may the Lord bless you as you put your trust into the beautiful nature that He has created, because we must admit that the medicine of today is not the traditional medicine. The medicine before was the natural one. And many of these natural treatments, just like we were saying about valerian, which had been basically synthesized to make it Valium, we're not condemning it, but we're saying we could go to the source. And especially if you get accustomed to use homeopathy, which is basically tincture, very potent, very effective. So may the Lord bless you as you continue to trust in what He has created. It is not the natural remedies that have power in themselves. It's the creator of the natural remedy and the faith that we put in Him and in His wonderful natural treatments that brings healing. May the Lord bless you.